That's right.
Well, I mean,
That's the Keyshawn palm tree right there. You know why?
It's the palm key.
Sunny, it's always beautiful.
Oh, well, there you go. Jeff, Tony Romo said, there you go. Tony Romo said the Cowboys offense is going to shift in philosophy a little bit. The identity might change and get back to the 2016, 17, 18 kind of identity because Amari Cooper. There are some guys subtracted who are dynamic playmakers from the offense. How much, first of all, you think that's true, and how much added pressure is that on Dak?
I mean, I could see that a little bit, Max. They still have CeeDee Lamb, who's an absolute stud, which I feel like is the only reason you could possibly justify letting Amari Cooper go via trade, by the way, their own decision. And I think the idea that the running game would be effective is not only because of the loss of some of the dynamic players in the wide receiver game, but also the running game feels like it's actually taken on a little bit of different identity and a more of a committee approach with Tony Pollard and Zeke sort of being able to maybe share some of the load. I actually think the Cowboys would benefit by maybe preserving Zeke a little bit and letting Pollard do what he does, given his effectiveness last season. And maybe that'd make Zeke better ultimately, even if his stats aren't quite as high.
Yeah, Jeff, I think when you talk about changing philosophies and getting back to what they did in those years that Max talked about, it's easier for an offensive lineman to push forward than to sit back on his heels. Pass protection for an offensive line, whether they're young or you're older, is very difficult. If I can mull you and push you forward and push you backwards as I go forward, it can benefit me based on age, experience, the health, all of those sort of things. And when I got dynamic running game coming behind me, opposed to having my quarterback drop back so much, especially when, CeeDee Lamb is a talented receiver, but we haven't seen him in a role where he's carrying the passing game other than at Oklahoma, which I think you and I both know college is way different than the pros. When you become the man in the pros, you become the man. In college, you can walk in straight out of high school and be the man with no problem at all. So it's going to change for him a little bit. And if you take the pressure off the quarterback by running the ball, your team ultimately offensively could look better.
Yeah. It's still, by the way, weird to me that Amari Cooper is not even there. I still have trouble wrapping around my mind about why that even happened. Why wouldn't they keep Cooper in the mix in Dallas? Maybe I'm missing something. It still feels weird to me.
Well, I think you economically, you're trying to move the money around because you got other people you got to address, all those sort of things. And you think that you can get the same type of production out of CeeDee Lamb that you got out of Amari Cooper. This is where general managers, front office people, and coaches go wrong at. They automatically assume that the second guy can step up. And if you think about it, Jeff, how many receivers that, since you've been covering the National Football League, have gone from the number 2 guy to the number 1 guy and has continued to show why he deserved to be the number 1 guy? It doesn't happen. It happens this much, and so I can go all the way back to when I first started playing in the NFL. I can think about Terrell Owens taking over for Jerry Rice. Eventually, T.O. got there. They realized that.
That's right.
I can think about how
That's rare.
I can think about how Alvin Harper moved on from Michael Irvin, and the Tampa Bay Bucks gave him a boatload to be the number 1 guy. 3 years later, he was basically gone, and they had to replace him with Bertie Manuel. So it's tough, but it can be done.
So Jeff, do you he mentioned it? Should the run game be more of a priority for the Cowboys? I know a lot of people have said this a lot. When the Cowboys run X amount of times, they do so much better. But when you pay Dak all that money, and then I hear things like, well, he's not the kind of guy who can drop back 50 times. Really? Isn't that why you give a quarterback all that money? Do you think it's a good idea for them to make the run game a priority?
See, I don't care as much about when you say you paid Dak all that money because he's got so many different jobs. He's a quarterback. He's the franchise, the face of the organization. I would actually argue when you pay Zeke all of that money,
right,
you've got to get more production out of him. But the only thing I'd say here is, like, from a strategic standpoint, you could run Zeke into the ground, which they've done at times, and it doesn't necessarily ultimately benefit you in the long term. And I think that that's where maybe with Tony, they finally maybe hit something here, given his production last year, where they could say, hey, this is a good idea. Let's not worry about Zeke's statistics from a standpoint of getting the most of our dollar out of him, but actually making him extremely effective throughout the year and maybe into the postseason. That, to me, would be the shift in strategy that I think would probably most benefit the Cowboys at this point.
Key, you're someone who likes that kind of approach. The quarterback game manages, is big on third down several times a game when you need them, and otherwise they run the ball, they play sound defense and all that. And whether or not they do that, at this moment, do you think the Cowboys or the Eagles have a better offense right now in the NFC East? I'll throw that out to both of you. Key, I'll start with you. Cowboys or Eagles, better offense?
I still think it's the Cowboys because they got the better quarterback.
Yeah.
And whenever you have the better quarterback, that's the answer, right? They just got the better quarterback. So naturally they're going to have the better offense. I think when you look at the receiving core, it's somewhat of a wash. Philadelphia's offensive line might be slightly better.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot better at this point.
But I still think it's the Cowboys.
Jeff, where are you?
I tend to agree, Key. I'm similar. Now, I would say the Eagles are in kind of a little bit of a plug-and-play situation with that quarterback position. If Jalen Hurts steps up, great. But if he doesn't, like, they've got themselves a little bit of an offense with A.J. Brown now, especially, to maybe make that next step to where they are better than the Cowboys. But, man, that division, I don't know, man. Key, maybe you disagree. That division, every year we talk about them so much, and it's because they're big market teams, and every year they disappoint us. So, like, it's hard for me to really even sit here and say that anybody's going to come out of that division and really light the world on fire until they prove it. Because I know the conversation still has to exist because somebody's going to win that division. But until somebody truly steps up, it's not about who's better in that division. It's who's actually better in the NFC and can actually make a run in the postseason. As far as I'm concerned, none of the teams in that division can do it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jeff. I don't think anybody in the division can make a strong run in the NFC. The Cowboys set you up for a heartbreak every single year. The Giants are what they are. Philadelphia is what they are. And Washington could be a surprise.
Meantime,
a little bit.
Guys, I want to get to wide receivers because Justin Jefferson said, and a lot of people say Justin Jefferson might be. Justin Jefferson said Devontae Adams is the best wide receiver in the NFL. But that after this season, he, meaning Justin Jefferson, will be the best. I actually think when he says that, that probably captures the opinion